Throughout its history, Notre Dame athletics has inspired men and women onward to victory in the game of life, often despite tremendous odds against them. These journeys have manifested themselves in a variety of physical, mental, and spiritual forms, but one element binds them together: persistence fueled by the spirit of Notre Dame. We will fight in every game, strong of heart and true to her name.
Because I made the decision to come to a place like Notre Dame, a school that I probably would not have been accepted to without my sport. Because I was challenged and supported by my coaches, by my faculty members, by people in this office. When I had my car accident and I was recovering and recognizing that the outlets and the options that I could engage in for the rest of my life have been reduced significantly because of my physical disability, it was a source of comfort, a source of reassurance that I had developed more than I think I would have at many other places. That my intellectual capacity, that my interpersonal skill set, all of those things really were farther along than I think they would have been had I been somewhere else. And because of that, I was well equipped to, one, finish my degree, and two, find an outlet and a profession that I could engage in, that I could feel passionate about, that I could do at a high level, in spite of the physical disabilities that resulted from the injury. And that was a great thing.
Heroes can be two things. They can be somebody who does something extraordinary, or they can be somebody who does something ordinary in extraordinary circumstances. And that's what I think Adam is and what his story is.
Former Notre Dame lacrosse player Adam Sargent joined Notre Dame's Academic Services for Student Athletes Department in the fall of 2000. Adam works closely with student athletes to help them excel academically while managing the demands of Division I collegiate athletics.
Before it was ever required by the NCAA, Father Joyce with Father Hesburgh in the early 1960s reached out to Mike DeCicco and inquired about a program like this. So we've had a pretty good history of making sure our student athletes get an education.
Adam is the heart and soul of that program. He really is. He's absolutely key to making sure that every student athlete makes that transition between wanting to focus on football and to focus on their educational experience and what they can take from Notre Dame and bring with them into life.
I think either one's fine. I just don't want you to miss out on an opportunity to work with Jesse while he's here.
No.
Does that work for you? Sure. Okay. Thanks, Malik.
Certainly having the background of being in the shoes of a varsity athlete helps him relate to what our student athletes experience at Notre Dame and the kinds of opportunities that they have at Notre Dame.
Adam was a high school hockey and lacrosse player. I'm not sure if he was playing lacrosse on ice or hockey on grass, but he embraced that the physical part of the game, and he was a presence on the field.
Adam would go on to play 3 seasons of lacrosse for Notre Dame until May 29, 1997, when, on his way to take an exam, he became paralyzed from the chest down in a car accident on the edge of campus.
John Heisler called me and told me that Adam had been in an accident, and so I went straight to the hospital where I found Adam, more than anything else, just scared. He wasn't sure, what was going on, and it was very emotional. It was extremely emotional. He was scared to death. He was at that point a very young man, looking at his whole life being different and alone. To me, the most remarkable thing about it is how quickly Adam adapted to the new reality of what his life was going to be. I know that there were many hard, private moments for him, but you really didn't see much of that from him. He quickly realized that you know, the arc of his life was going to be a little bit different. But what he didn't do is you know, waste a lot of time, you know, worrying about it or not kind of accepting, you know, what it was. He quickly realized, all right, I've still got an awful lot of skills and abilities and talents that I'm just going to have to bring to the forefront more than maybe I have in the past. And the whole thing to me, you know, that makes Adam's story so heroic in my mind is just he adapted to absolutely kind of horrific, extraordinary circumstances quickly and got on with his life in a really remarkably positive way for him and for the people that are around him.
When Notre Dame's Strong of Heart continues, Adam transitions from student athlete to academic mentor. Adam mentors members of the football team to maximize their academic potential. His tough love contributed to Notre Dame's 4th straight #1 ranking in the NCAA graduation success rate for football in 2012.
Notre Dame's a place that really cares about how you develop as a person. The values of Notre Dame are something that in any circumstance in your life, they're going to help you. And so I think you find these stories kind of over and over again at a place like this because you find that those values are not things that let you down. You know, that those are the things that you know, lives can be built on.
I think the accident and the realization after the accident of how fragile life can be and how much adversity can affect people certainly has been a fundamental part in motivating me when I work with my students, to push them and to challenge them, to really get the most out of this education, to prepare them for whatever potential adversity might come down the pike.
So if I find you a slot tomorrow, 2 or 3 o'clock, you take advantage of it.
I'll have some.
You know, when you meet Adam, it's very real. Everything is, look, this is the way it is, and there's no fluff to it. You can't, you know, pull a fast one on Adam, if you will. You know, he knows, he's been through it. He knows that if you're kind of slacking, if you will. You know, he knows if you're, yeah, I was kind of studying, but I didn't, and you know what I mean? He'll call that out like almost immediately because he knows that, look, I've been through that. I've seen that before.
I think the biggest thing that he helped me with was probably the structure, getting structure in my life. I mean, as a youth, you could get away with, you know, maybe putting, you know, 50% effort in, 60% effort in, and getting by, you know. But he kind of opened my eyes that, you know, you're at Notre Dame, you know, you're given much, but also much is going to be expected from you. And so we're going to need structure, and you're going to have to be 100% in.
This really is a community. You know, we're inviting young people to be a part of our institution, and part of the format that Notre Dame embraces is the belief that we are all members of a very intimate community, a community of learning, right? A community that fosters engagement and participation and developing close relationships with professors and students, advisors. And through this community, we have the ability to not only educate young people, but really help them develop those professional relationships and get a sense of what it means to be a contributing member of a group, and that's important.
Day in and day out, you're writing the legacy of who you're going to be, you know, and if you take shortcuts, don't do things the right way, in the end it will catch up to you. And maybe that's how I was doing it prior to Notre Dame, you know, wasn't always, you know, putting my best foot forward, and, you know, in the end it probably caught up to me those first couple weeks while I was there. So he really just kind of opened my eyes to how you should do things, doing things the right way, and he did that by putting structure into my life.
It's the manifestation of the promise that Notre Dame makes. And that promise is, we're not going to compromise academics, but that doesn't mean that you can't compete at the highest level athletically. And that's a difficult thing to do for kids. It absolutely can be done, but it takes work, and it takes a learning process for the kids to figure out how to do it, and to do it effectively, and to do it in a way where they can compete on both sides of the street at the level that they want to compete at.
Adam's still the same guy that I had when I was a student here. His honesty, the way he deals with people, his personality, his knowledge. You know, there's a lot of qualities that Adam has that are qualities that I find to be pretty impressive. and extremely important. You know, his loyalty. You know, I wouldn't be back here at Notre Dame in this position if it wasn't for Adam Sargent.
Every time I'm with Adam, I'm struck by in his character that to me I marvel at. You know, it's just, he's such a positive, interesting, wonderful, you know, person, and you know, to overcome, you know, what he has, and still to have what, you know, has to be, you know, daily struggles in that and to remain that way on such a consistent basis, I find unbelievable.
We certainly wouldn't be as strong an office without Adam. Adam has and continues to impact lives every day.
It's people like Adam Sargent, you know, the people who aren't in the spotlight. You know, there's something to be said for, you know, for all the athletes and the great coaches and the athletes who maybe get to the national stage. But the people who might not get the press, you know, being an alum, that's what makes that place special. And when I go back, you know, you always want to run into those people because they're top-notch individuals, and just being able to be around them for 4 years, whether you notice at the time or not, it's going to make you a better person in the end.
In the summer of 2010, Deanna Gumpf, head coach of Notre Dame's softball team, was thrown the biggest curveball of her life. Her 4-year-old daughter Tatum was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia.
Tatum's like our little sister. She is a ball of fun. She is just always bouncing around, you know, always talking to us. And before everything had happened, I realized, you know, Tatum's so much fun. And the greatest part was that she stayed pretty much the same after. You know, she was always out there trying to have fun and trying to hang out with us. And, you know, it's just really cool to have that kind of relationship.
In the summer of 2010, Deanna Gumpf, head coach of Notre Dame's softball team, was thrown the biggest curveball of her life. Her 4-year-old daughter, Tatum, was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia.
The day was kind of crazy. I remember, it's like yesterday. I kept Tatum with me because I knew she was a little bit off, and she'd kind of had that fever on and off. And she woke up that morning, and it looked like she had dried chocolate on her lips. And I was like, that is so, what were you doing last night, Tatum? She's like, nothing. I said, did you eat something? And she said, no. And I wiped it off with a tissue and got a washcloth and wiped it some more. And then I brushed her teeth. And when I brushed her teeth, her gums were just bleeding like crazy. And I thought, whoa, this is just weird. I called her doctor, her pediatrician, and I said, something's funny. Her gums are bleeding when I brush her teeth. And she woke up with blood on her mouth. And her pediatrician said, bring her in right away. And so we brought her in, and she just took a blood test, and then we left. And then I went back to the office.
She comes back about maybe an hour and a half later, and she has Tatum with her. And I remember this vividly. They brought in sushi, and they were gonna eat lunch. And literally we were just in there, you know, I was joking around with Tatum, and got her sushi all set up, and Deanna's phone rings. Well, Deanna stepped out, went into Lizzie's office because Lizzie was out of town, and takes the phone call, and I can just hear, like, you just got that feeling that there was something wrong.
And she said, there's something wrong with Tatum. And I said, what? And she said, okay, it's one of two things and neither are good. And I said, okay. And she said, no matter what, you need to get down, you need to go to Memorial Hospital, you need to get her blood drawn again, and then from there, you're probably gonna be going to Riley Children's Hospital in Indianapolis. And I said, okay, well, what are these two things? Because I'm like, I need to know what's going on. And she said, well, it's either leukemia or aplastic anemia.
The doctor told Deanna to bring Tatum in right away. We need to do blood work. And after the results came, Deanna actually couldn't get a hold of me because I was in the chapel, just praying for help.
Went over to Memorial, met my husband over there, and my sister drove me because I was kind of a mess. And he took the blood test again, and literally within 15 minutes he said, okay, we think she has leukemia. You need to go down to Riley. And I don't remember that drive at all.
A lot of things going through my head, you know, a lot of prayers.
It was the worst feeling I'd ever felt in my life. When we got to Riley, it was close. It was a life and death situation because she had nothing to help her survive. And I think that's why the transfusions happened so quickly because she had nothing to fight anything off with. She had no immune system and she had hardly any hemoglobin left. So it was very critical at that moment.
Deanna and I both we want to figure it out and let's do what we got to do to get this fixed. I think Deanna absorbed more of it. She probably got a master's in leukemia in about 2 days, and while she was absorbing most of it, I was trying to stay with Tatum and just kind of keep her away from hearing certain things, or just, keep her busy.
With Deanna being a coach, it definitely helped her with the plan of attack for getting all the resources together. She had this huge binder of information that she used for reference whenever something would come up. I think that's similar to her coaching plan where she's got all of her information around her.
Being a coach, or if it's just me, or being a coach or what that is, it's absolutely how I do things. I need to know what it is, I need to know how to handle it, and I need to kind of make a plan of attack of how we're going to deal with it. Once I knew what we were dealing with and what, acute lymphoblastic leukemia was, okay, so what do we need to do? I need to know the best scenario, the worst scenario, and everything in between, and then we just go. And that's kind of how we've been handling it over the last 2.5 years.
When Notre Dame's Strong of Heart continues, Tatum's recovery gains momentum with support from the Notre Dame community. Once past the initial shock of Tatum's diagnosis, Deanna realizes she and her family won't have to face this life-threatening disease alone.
The Notre Dame family reached out immediately and didn't stop. Truly, I don't think I could have handled it anywhere else. I believe, things happen for weird reasons, and I'm so thankful that I work at Notre Dame when my daughter was diagnosed with cancer. I can't imagine being somewhere else and not having the community that we have here. I can't remember a day that didn't go by that I didn't receive a message from somebody from Notre Dame for like the first month and a half. Just, are you okay? What do you need? Tell us what you need. Everyone kept saying, what do you need? What do you need? What do you need? And all I needed was my daughter to get better.
We are all just so close here. I think that we just know each other, and we just, we can rely on each other. We're hard on each other. We're honest with each other. And, these guys are here for me day in and day out. And, I'm here for them as well.
They just crush these kids the first 28 days after they're diagnosed. And then, depending on how they handle that first 28 days, they go one direction or the other. And she did great. I saw her physically getting better about 3 months later. She got some energy back and started dancing around again and becoming her again.
So when I was at Riley, everyone was coming in, surprising me with balloons, and then they were all saying, I've been praying for you, and I hope you get done pretty soon.
The way that they beat the leukemic cells is they just crush their immune system so nothing grows. And so I didn't let her out of the house very often. I kind of kept her in our little bubble world. She came out for her leukemia game. We had a special game for kids with cancer.
The first Strikeout Cancer Day was so emotional because it was one of the first times, first of all, that Tatum had left the house in months. And just seeing her out there, and she was so excited to be out there, and you were just so happy for her. But at the same time, she was in uniform, but she didn't have her hair at that point. You still knew it was still kind of a smack in the face a little that this kid was battling.
She loved the attention. She had a great time out there, and I think the funniest thing was she would go into the stands and sell her autograph so she could donate that money to Memorial also. So she got up there and she said, do you want my autograph? Do you want my autograph? It's only 50 cents. She actually made about $35.
I remember putting the uniform on her that morning. It was great. And just bringing her out here to be a part of it, But to see her run around and stretch with the girls, and then throw out the first pitch was awesome.
When we walked out there together, I was just a mess. And just to watch her, to see her throw that out when there was a time where I didn't think I'd have her. It was pretty awesome. We had a huge party when she was done with treatment in September. So she finished her last treatment, and 2 weeks later we had a bash. The biggest party I've ever had. And all of our friends and family were there. It was just a big, huge orange party. And it was a blast. And then 2 months later, she was able to get her port out. And that, it was a very scary day. Because to think that she's getting her port out and it's really over is scary to me. It's almost too good to be true. So I have a hard time thinking that it's really done.
I think we're winning innings. You know, there's a timeline, I think within 5 years or whatever, certain years. I don't know if even after that timeline will I say we won the game, but we're definitely winning innings. And I see us winning a lot more innings.
Coach never gives up, and once Coach has a goal on her mind or something that she wants to strive for, she will do everything in her power to see that that goal is reached. I think with Tatum, it's a perfect example of that. She wanted to do everything possible for her daughter, and I believe she did.
I think more than anything I've learned, no matter what I'm going through, you know, it's not the worst of the worst. You can make it, and I think her positive attitude through everything was really what helped her fight and what I've definitely learned from in that whole situation.
Notre Dame is a family, and when you're part of it, you totally understand that. And I think you feel that the most when things are hard, because I think the people make Notre Dame, Notre Dame, and you're never alone.